Director Alex Schaffman built his name as a film producer, with horror features like House of Spoils from 2024, which brought culinary horror to a whole new level, as well as the Rebecca Hall-led psychological horror Resurrection from 2022. In 2023, it was announced that Schaffman will make his full directorial debut with a film titled Death of a Unicorn, starring A-lister Paul Rudd and Scream Princess Jenna Ortega. The title was a bit misleading and felt like a whimsical Sundance indie drama comedy until you realize it was really about death of the mythical creature through the marketing materials. Rudd played Elliot, who was on a trip for a weekend stay with his boss, Odell Leopold, and he brought his estranged daughter Ridley along for some unknown reasons. The Leopold's residence was deep in some secluded, off-the-grid location, and during a drive with Elliot coping with his pollen allergy flaring up, the car knocked over some quadrupedal creature which we all knew was the titular unicorn. Astounded by the roadkill, the father and daughter would bring it to the Leopold, where the whole group of characters would be embroiled in something they would find hard to comprehend and a threat they would not anticipate. As the movie developed into a creature feature, this was another classic cautionary tale of the hubris of the humankind and the blatant lack of consideration of the consequences when your mind had been corrupted by wealth and power. With Schaffman taking reference from the Unicorn Tapestries, which depicted a fascination about the mystical cryptic, yet a warning to mankind of refraining to be disillusional and be prepared for the repercussion if you meddled with the forbidden. Ortega's Ridley was the moral compass, trying to warn everyone not to go all out with their supposed fortune mining, as she could feel the wrath was brewing within the woods and the wind. I knew that Jenny Ortega had been adored by horror fans for her commitments to all types of horror projects, and she had carved out the stoic Wednesday Addams to great success. Her performance had always been the same, juxtaposing between the stoic nonplussed austerity and the intense manic when her cold front had been torn down due to the ongoings around her. It was certainly not absurd to envision her as a rebellious teenager, and she was really good rolling her eyes to the unsavory people in this situation. I was not totally bought into her character from the onset, like I wasn't infatuated with her characters in movies like Beetlejuice and Scream 5, but Ridley did grow on me by that final act, although the whole connection with the unicorns felt coerced. There was a certain level of chemistry between Ortega and Paul Rudd as a father, who tried to make up for lost time after the passing of his wife, a key sentimental plot point to tie into the mythical powers of the unicorn. The casting choice of Rudd was to milk the affable American father figure that even if there were flaws in him, you just knew that there was a redemption at the end of it. Other than that, you can cast anyone else in his role. The real appeal from the cast came from the haughty Leopolds and their recalcitrant misdemeanor, starting with the son Shepard, with Will Poulter in the role. Lanky and awkward, Shepard in his belted up khaki shorts, and like Kieran Culkin's character Roman in Succession, he was never been treated seriously by his father in this cutthroat world of business. You could see him trying to emulate his old man with his choice of words and mannerism, but all came out weird and uncomfortable, especially for himself. While he held a hope for recognition from his father, he also lamented over the fact that his own mother treated him as a joke. Speaking of which, I never thought much of Tia Leone, the one-time Mrs. David Duchovny, but assuming the role as the matriarch of the Leopold Empire, she was a scheming and fake person that might be the worst among the lot. Richard E. Grant is a British thespian that I will be acquainted with in recent years, but as Odell Leopold, who at the start of the movie was decimated by chronic illness and was prepared to meet his maker, until Elliot and Ridley brought him an unexpected elixir of health and longevity. As a businessman who built his empire in a ruthless manner, you just knew he was not going to see a pot of gold in front of him and not jumped on the opportunity. As Odell, Grant was at his devious best and felt like a perfect casting choice. Other supporting casts were fun as well, with Stephen Park and Sunita Mani as the physician cum drug researchers, always on the tenterhooks of the megalomaniac Odell and his family. Anthony Carrigan played the scary bald butler, who actually was closest to an ally to Ridley's rationality in most situations. There was one instance when his character Griff was bullied by his employer. You can't help but to sympathize with him. If we are talking about the cast of characters, we need to touch on the unicorns. I don't know how to express my feelings over the CGI creations of the mythical creatures. I could see the effort in the creation, yet it did not feel like a threat, like when we see the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park back in the 1990s. Maybe that's too high a bar to compare to. Schaffman team gave the family of unicorns each a characteristic aesthetic, so you can differentiate between the male and the female during their savagery within the Leopold compound. These unicorns with their predatory fangs were certainly not those you will see in fairy tales or on Disney Channel, yet there was nothing memorable about this rendition. Nevertheless, seeing abhorrent characters being skewered by the horn or having the body mangled with sheer strength or the large hooves stomping on the head like a watermelon must be something fun for horror fans who were buying into some gore. Death of a Unicorn is yet another smaller horror feature in the A24 library, and to detractors, it was another miss like Carl Mooney's Y2K, but I certainly had lots of fun seeing the likes of Grant, Leonie, and Poulter chewing screen, and the innate evil within the wealthy 1% and the speed of greed spreading like wildfire was perhaps apparent in this world now that we're talking about cryptocurrency and non-substantial things like NFTs. Death of a Unicorn is a meek 6.5 out of 10. Before we go, let me do a quick review of Finn Wolfhard and Billy Briggs' Hell of a Summer. This movie ended with a song that said this was a waste of time. Yes, watching this movie felt like a waste of my time. Going to the movie, it felt like a homage to Wet Hot American Summer with a group of Summers camp counselors and their shenanigans. The prologue also had strong echoes of Friday the 13th with Camp Crystal Lake as the obvious backdrop to copy with. It was all fine and dandy to just follow a classic 1980s slasher feature with a summer camp and the motley crew of camp counselors as the victims. Wolfhard and Briggs had to complicate things with their take of Scream, with the killer's motives awfully convoluted and safe to say not interesting at all. The protagonist to root for is a man-child, which every single character told us that he was a dramatic crybaby who could not move on in his life. There was no way I'm going to care about whether this person was going to survive or even had a redeeming story arc, which to be frank was as good as nothing. Wolfhard from Stranger Things fame and his Ghostbusters Afterlife co-star Briggs were part of this obnoxious cast who felt like a pretentious woke Gen Z group of young people and the worst kind you were ever seen all gathered in one location. Of course, it was at least satisfying to see them killed, right? Nope, the kills were not even fun. As one of the killers would say in the movie, I had been wanting to kill all of you for so long. I was awfully surprised that Neon had faith in this movie to distribute it, but looking at the lackluster box office run, 2 years after its premiere in Toronto International Film Festival, it felt like not many horror fans gave this much of a chance as well. Stay away from Hell of a Summer. Your time is better used on some B-grade gore fest from the 1980s. This is an unprecedented 3 out of 10 from me. There are awful horror movies, but there are awful horror movies we love to watch and enjoy the awfulness. This movie was not it. If you enjoy me bashing a movie in my movie reviews, please click a like and put a comment to let me know about it. Please also subscribe to KK's Horror Heretics. If you enjoyed this review, maybe watch a few from the 60 odd reviews I've done previously to see if my videos whet your appetite. My previous review was on David F. Sandberg's adaptation of the PlayStation video game Until Dawn, where I also went through some notable horror game adaptations over the years. Is there a tally of cryptids that have been a victim of a roadkill on the big screen? I'm sure almost everything has been covered so far.